Welcome back to Awakening Reformation, where Reformation awakens now. My name is Grant, and joined with me is my beautiful wife, Erica, the weaker vessel.
Hello, everyone.
If you want to get to know more about us, we're part of the Reformed Rebel Network. So go subscribe to the feed in your podcast catcher, subscribe on YouTube, hit the bell so you get notified when we put out new content, and go follow us on social media. We got the Rebel Podcast, the Great Exchange, and it's a great network. We love it, right?
Ezra Institute's putting stuff out too, aren't they?
Yeah, and they used to have a very long and very complicated name for their podcast,
yeah,
but I think it's just the Ezra Podcast now.
Okay.
Something simple like that. I think Ryan was trying to simplify what they're doing there, but obviously
it's good. Whatever
Joe,
it is, it's good.
Yeah, they Nathan O'Black, Ryan Harris. They have Joe Boot on there, the president of the Ezra Institute, and he's just like one of the most, he's one of the smartest people on earth. So you will benefit a lot listening to that podcast.
Jose.
Oh, that's his name.
That's his name.
So go check it all out. It's really great. You can support us financially if you go to patreon.com/reformedrebel, and that's a huge help too. So anyway, like the content, share it all over the place, do all those things that everyone tells you to do, and we love it. So, we're continuing. We began a series called the Theology of Family last week, and hopefully gave you a great intro. If you didn't catch it, go back and listen to it, and then you'll get your intro into the series that we're doing.
A little foundational episode.
Yeah, and so we said on that episode that we were going to continue the series and kind of dig deeper into the several different aspects of family. And today we have the great honor and privilege of talking about men.
I'm not one, so that's fun.
The weaker vessel is not one. She is a woman. Did I say it right?
Kind of.
Woman. I never say it right. So today we're going to talk about the roles and responsibilities of a man. Last week we just talked about God's design for family, and we sort of, kind of did a flyover of all
just
of the roles and stuff.
Just laying the foundation for what a family is and what God's design for it is.
Yeah.
And the future of family too, like the post-millennial ends, the telos.
Right. So what is man's role in all of that? What is specific to man's role when it comes to a godly family and producing godly offspring and giving to God a godly lineage, which is what he commands?
Yes.
So we got to start with creation, right?
Yep, always.
We got to start with Genesis 1. I mean, I don't know why I'm thinking of this, but like Jesus always pointed back to creation, and Paul, when he's making an argument for male leadership in the church, he refers everyone back to creation. He refers to how God created it. So this isn't just our little, trick with how we understand the Bible. We see it from Jesus and Paul, and there's probably others too, right? But that is the framework. That is the model. The design is creation. So we should always first go back there for how we want to understand something.
Well, and that's just true of anything in life. If you want to know how something's going to work, you got to figure out what it was created to do. So, seems pretty basic.
So that was a little free chicken there.
There you go.
A little free hermeneutical chicken. How do you read the Bible and understand the world? But right away we see that the command given to Adam and Eve was to be fruitful and multiply, right? Adam can't do that by himself.
Nor can Eve.
Which is what makes
marriage,
the Advent season such a miracle, right?
That's true, yeah.
Mary became pregnant and she never knew a man.
Right.
So those are given both to man and women. So that's still a command man is supposed to take serious, right? A man is supposed to, I'm supposed to be fruitful and multiply. And do you want to go into that a little bit? Because I know a lot of people right away will be like, well, what about singles?
Well, I think even in society right now, the idea of freedom and being childless is considered the ideal.
It's a huge idol, right?
Completely. Men are not encouraged from little on to grow up and be husbands and have a bunch of babies.
Yeah.
Like, that's not something that most men are terrified of that, right? Most men, the thought of having to like hold a baby is petrifying to them.
Mm-hmm.
And then everyone laughs, ha ha, so funny.
Yeah.
Like that man doesn't know how to be around a child, or he's scared of kids, but that shouldn't be so in the church.
Yeah, there's an overreaction in what is called the manosphere to the feminist movement. And it's men who are basically saying, I don't need a woman, I can take care of myself, I can do it myself, I don't need to marry anyone, I can get someone I want some, and I can cook, I can take, right? And that's kind of the overreaction to the feminist movement. And we would say that is wrong, because you are still supposed to be fruitful and multiply. And
see the value in children, even if you don't have any. Like, even if, like you said, you're single, or you and your wife are infertile for some reason, or whatever, you still ought to see the value in family and in children.
Right. And so we know that some people, it's very rare. And that's the thing. People always want to bring up the what if or the qualification to something when it only applies to like
a very small fraction. Yeah.
That we do know that some people are given the gift of singleness, and that happens.
But even if you were given that gift, it's never appropriate for you to look down on children or to not, like I said, not value children, because it's still a command given to men to be fruitful and multiply. So if you're turning up your nose to a command of God, well, you're just in sin.
Yeah. Or if you say, well, I'm not going to get married or have kids, I think God's given me the gift of singleness, but then you sleep around.
Yeah, no, you've not been given that gift.
Yeah, you don't have that gift.
If you're looking at porn, you're not.
Right. No, that's good. Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, you don't have that gift. You're just being disobedient.
You're being a coward, really, is what you're being.
Well, yeah. So I'm trying to think of what else, is at the foundation of the roles and responsibilities for men at the beginning of the Bible. And it says in Genesis 2 that God took the man and he put him in the garden to work and to keep it. So this is before the fall. And we see that it's a sovereign act of God, right? Who has given you a specific role. You don't get to choose this. There's no job fair, right? Or like, let's see how I want to live my life for God. No, God took the man and put him in the garden to work and to keep it. So work, though it is laborious now because of sin, it is not a sin. Work is something that we were designed to do. Yeah, not a result to do. The labor of it, right? The sweat of your brow, you will bring forth crops and all of that. That's a result of sin, the labor of it. But work itself is not. So men are supposed to work, and in that way supposed to love it, right? It's a gift from God. It's something he's made us to do, given us for us to do. And so it should be something we love and look to do.
Right. Well, and all obedience should be done joyfully.
Yep.
So if you have a job that God has given to you, then when you are doing that job, you shouldn't be doing it with a crabby attitude. You should be doing it with gratitude and with joy in your heart as unto the Lord. Yeah.
So the whole sulking attitude when you head to work, or or the joy anytime that you don't have to work or something, that's sinful. That's a sinful view of your work. And it's very popular. Can I talk today? It's very popular to disdain work, right? So anytime you can get out of it, or anytime you don't have to do it, or if you can just be the last one to, raise your hand to have to go do something, that's better. But all of that is sinful, and it's resisting the design God has made.
And I'm just thinking of the parable of the talents.
Oh, yeah, that's good.
Where God gives, Jesus in his parable, he's talking about the master giving his servants like different amounts of money.
Yeah.
And the person who was given a small amount of money, who didn't want to like lose it, buried it.
Yeah.
And the rest of the workers invested their money and made a profit back, some more than others. But then when the master came back, he was impressed by those who had made a profit on what he had given his workers.
Mm-hmm.
And the one that just buried the talent, that just buried the money and didn't make any profit back on it, who were the servant who was lazy,
Yep.
he condemns.
Yeah, he says that explicitly, right? Like,
Yeah.
you wicked, lazy
Yeah.
servant. And so every man is given different physical abilities, different mental abilities, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about all of that stuff at the end of this episode. But we do see that everyone's given different abilities, right? I don't know, there's a lot of things
Different
I can't
giftings,
do.
yeah.
Different giftings. And that makes sense when we even look at the church, right? The church is a body with many different parts. And if you just look at society, like, we need people to build things. We need people to compute things. We need healthcare, workers. We need doctors. We need dentists. We need preachers, right? We need the whole scope of things. And so whatever God's given you, it could be 5 talents, it could be 3, 10, or whatever it is. But you're supposed to get God a return on it.
Yeah, God has entrusted something to you. He's given you a gift, and you need to figure out how you can get the maximum return on his investment. Right.
Adam was put in the garden, and it was supposed to make many more gardens all over the earth.
He was supposed to make, so that's what the command was. Like, make the earth, make all of the globe look like what I've done here in this garden.
Right. Don't just keep this garden. Let's spread and make this go
Well,
everywhere.
and that's why when men hate children, or they don't want children or families, it's the same basic principle, because what they're saying is, this new creation that you have done in my heart, I'm grateful for, but I'm not going to go and create more new creations anywhere else, right? Like, you're saying, God did that new creation in me, but if I were to have a child, if I were to make a new creation, a covenant child, I would hate that.
Yeah. So my mind is going back to the word work again in Genesis 2, because the Hebrew word for work in that verse is the same word for husbanding and being a husband. And I think we think of vineyards a lot of time when we think of a husbandman, or I think Jesus even told the parable about the vineyard and stuff. But that idea of caring for, and like you work it to make it more and more beautiful and to make it more and more fruitful. That's what a husband does.
Productive, yeah.
Right? You're productive. And so I know we're going back to the parable of the talents again, to get a return on it. But that means everything that you do in your life, as a husband to a wife, or as a father, or as a worker at your job,
or in your church.
Yeah, it's serving in your church. Wherever you go, you should be living in such a way that there is a return.
Right.
Right? And so if you're just like, I want to be entry level at my job, and then that's it, I just want...
Because I can make enough money, and I have to do very little work, or less work than if I actually tried to climb the ladder.
Right. And it like, this idea of God's design for men knows nothing of stagnant water.
Right.
You
can't bury your talent.
Right. That is burying your talent. And I hear that a lot. And not even... There's some really awesome Christian men here, we're up here in Canada where we're at now. But wherever we've lived, you hear that a lot from people. They just, I don't want that, because then I'll have more responsibility, or I'll have to deal with people, or whatever the excuse is. And it's just disobeying that command to work the ground like God has made men to do, to be a husband in all that they do.
Well, and I can't think of anything more, demasculizing?
Demasculating?
Demasculating? I don't know.
Demasculating?
Anything more unmasculine. How about that?
Nice. Nailed it. I like when we do that.
Yeah. Words and stuff.
It changes over time.
I can't think of anything more unmasculine than a man who's afraid of a little bit of sweat. Like, he is too afraid to get his hands dirty.
Yeah. Isn't that the worst?
That guy's kind of gross, right?
Yeah. Yeah, any guy that can't stand to get a little dirty.
They can't just, broaden his shoulders a little bit and bear a little bit of weight that's placed on there. Like, and we tell our son that all the time when he's
your shoulders.
Being fussy. It's like, no, boys don't fuss. girls don't fuss either, but men don't fuss, and you need to broaden your shoulders. If it's hard, broaden your shoulders, because God has given you the ability to bear this weight. And if your shoulders are small, broaden them. Grow. Ask God for help. But we're not going to just be little fussers.
If you broaden your shoulders, it will make it easier.
Yep.
Yeah. No, that's really good. So the other thing in that verse is to keep it, right? So the next thing, and that word keep is the same word to protect, right? And so you're guarding and protecting. And this is where that comes from, where we tell men are supposed to be the protectors in the of their wives, of their children, and even in
home.
Society too. Yeah, their home, but just in society, men are the protectors. Men were told to keep it, not women. Men are supposed to be law enforcement, military, and we see this in God's law, where he specifically says that men are the ones at a certain age who go to war.
Right.
Women do not go to war. Women do not wear the men's attire, right?
Right.
And in Isaiah,
and it's a shame when they do. Like, it's a shame to the men. Why aren't the men doing this? Why are you forcing your women to do this? Right.
You might bring up the story of Deborah, but when you look at the story, even she was saying, like, Barak, you know this is your job, right?
Yeah.
She wasn't just like, oh yeah, I'm just as good a military leader as he is, so why not I go? Which is always the argument you hear today, right? Well,
and then Barak is given credit for Deborah pushing him into his masculinity too, right?
Yeah.
Like in the New Testament, you read passages that talk about the braveness of Barak, I think it is, and you think, why isn't Deborah given credit there? Well, because just the mere fact that, like, Barak actually acted in his role is a credit to Deborah, because she didn't want credit. Like, any godly woman would not have wanted credit for that action. Just the fact that he did it is like, good on you, Deborah.
Yeah.
Good on you for requiring something of men.
Yeah. And then at the end of that story, doesn't God tells Barak, right? You will not get, you won't get the glory for the win in this battle. The glory will go to a woman, which it did. She pushed the rock over the edge of the tower, and it landed on the head.
Well, and Jael was the one that put the tent peg in the enemy's forehead.
Yep.
So.
Yeah, a lot of women crushing skulls.
Yeah, which is biblical too. But we'll talk about that next time.
Yeah. And so another thing is in Isaiah, it's in the early chapters there, and it's an indictment. It's part of the judgment that God is giving them, and he's saying that your women will rule over you.
Right.
And so when we see that happening, we got to then look at the men and go, oh yeah, we're failing here because a woman's ruling.
Right.
That was part of God's judgment. And so, you know, I look at America, and like the one holdout state that never did a lockdown is South Dakota. And I can't remember her name, but the governor of South Dakota is a woman who is upholding constitutional law. And she is being the Deborah in that sense. She is totally being the Deborah. And her courage and her ability to stand firm and all that is a judgment on all the other men who are completely caving and being wimpy and noodly with how they are ruling.
Right.
You know, so.
And our goal is never to just find stronger women. Our goal then should be to raise stronger men. Like, you know what I mean? So when there are men in society who are noodly and can't bear the weight of anything on their shoulders because they're so narrow, then the goal is never to just be like, well, let's find a chick then.
Right, yeah. Or, well, if a woman can do it, then we'll just find another one of those.
Like, we're not pragmatists.
Right, exactly.
We actually should stop and say, well, let's start discipling godly men. Let's raise them up and teach them how to broaden their shoulders and bear weight that God rightfully gives to them. But then also, like, raise up sons. Like, actual manly, godly, masculine sons.
Right.
We don't need noodly little boys who can't sit through church.
Yep.
We do that with our son all the time.
Yep.
We don't need noodly little boys who lean up against mom in church and can't stand straight.
Yeah.
We don't need boys who hit their sisters and can't keep their hands to themselves.
Or who whine when things don't go their way.
Like, there are so many ways in which we just enable these noodly little whiny fussy boys to grow up to be noodly little whiny fussy men.
Yeah, right.
But we want sons who are raised up and matured in their youth.
Yep.
That's the goal.
Like we say on Sabbath dinner night for the boys, that They need to be strong saplings grown up in their youth. We want them to be as manly and grown up as possible, even while they're a youth. Mm-hmm. You don't wait till later. None of being a godly family is waiting till later. Your son will never come up to you one day and go, "Mother, Father, I think I am ready for you now to treat me as a man."
Right.
Never will that happen. We're commanded to just make them that way and to train them and raise them up in the fear and admonition of the Lord, and to teach them these things about work and about protecting and about being fruitful and multiplying. I mean, those, and taking dominion, right? There's no realm in this earth that men are not supposed to go and take dominion of and submit under the lordship of Jesus. Mm-hmm. There's not one bit of it. And so that's what we drive with. You know what I mean?
Right. So it starts there.
Yeah. And so, listen, there's like a bajillion things. Like, men are cowards. Men defer to women all the time.
Men are scared of women.
Men
oh my
are terrified of women. This is one thing, like, I love you so much that you tell me, like, it and this is like a godly woman in you, that you're like, it bothers me way more when you just are scared of me. Like, even if I'm upset or I disagree or something, and then you start acting scared of me, like, that's the worst thing you can do, dudes, is when your wife's upset or you have to say something that's going to disagree with her, and then you start acting like you're scared of her. Now she feels like she has no covering, no protection. Like,
yeah, if you're scared of me, how are you ever going to be able to protect me from the enemy?
Right. Like, men, what you do, and men and women are different, very, very different, right? And like, how a man acts and functions and responds to things in the world, it communicates something to his wife, right? Or to the children. And so if you walk outside your front door, or if you're the sloth in the Proverbs that's like, there's a lion outside.
Right.
There's a virus. We can't go to church, honey. And the wife's like, oh yeah, I really thought we were just going to go to church. But it just communicates, your actions communicate something to your spouse. And so when you are fearful of all these things in the world, then she obviously is going to have to step up and be Deborah, because she has no protection, no covering, and she will not be the respectful, submissive wife that she's called to be.
Right.
It's just, it complicates the whole thing. And men do this with all kinds of stuff.
Right.
Even saying to the wife, like, oh, well, I don't want to, get that promotion. It'd be a lot more responsibility. Like, what is he communicating to his wife in that? Like, he doesn't want to ever get stronger. He doesn't ever want to better provide for his family. He's scared of anything more happening in life. Like, there's all kinds of things that's communicating to the wife, and that would be scary.
That she's not worth a little extra work.
Yeah, that too.
Yeah.
There's so much there that...
And you're training your sons to be the same way.
Yep.
Like, they're watching you, and they're watching everything you do. Yeah. And if you're saying, it's too much work, you really think your sons are going to grow up and value work if you're being lazy?
Right, exactly.
No.
Well, and if you... And that goes to everything, right? If you're not prioritizing your wife, your sons won't prioritize their wives. If you don't, treat your daughters with care and respect, then your sons aren't going to treat their daughters with care and respect. And there's always a mimicking that's going to happen.
Right.
Obviously, there's God's grace that can come in and break those chains.
Mm-hmm. Those bad habits.
But typically, God, and this is how God has created the world to go.
Well, you are discipling your kids.
Yeah. Covenantal succession in family is how God has wired the world to go.
And this is why
good or bad.
And this is why we often joke with each other and say, like, whatever misbehavior our children are currently experiencing, it typically stems from some misbehavior that we are indulging in.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
There's a lack of discipline in us, and that's why our children are responding in suit.
Yeah, and it's not like the game Simon Says. Like,
but sometimes it really is that obvious.
Sometimes it is that obvious.
Sometimes.
But there will be times where you're like, man, why are the kids, acting up, or why are the kids, having such a hard time listening today? And then you're like, oh yeah, I totally skipped over Bible reading this morning.
And I've been really snippy and rude, and now they're being snippy and rude with each other.
Yeah. Like, sometimes it's kind of an unseen thing.
Right.
But no matter what, though, it trickles down.
Well, and why is my son acting in these ways that are very unseemly? Why is my son being whiny? Why is my son lazy? Why is my son refusing to go outside and work with his hands or whatever it is? And you think, how have I led him in masculinity? How have I shown him what a man looks like? Am I always gone and he has no idea what a man looks like? So all he knows is the domestic realm that his mother teaches him.
Right.
That's a very real possibility. And when you were in the military, that was a very real possibility because he didn't have dad around all the time. And so we had to be very
intentional.
We had to be very specific with what we did when you were around because I didn't want him thinking that the domestic realm was his realm to manage. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and you were good. Like there are some good pastors and people out there that encourage men to protect their sons from their mothers, and then also and the other way around too, where mothers can be, well, are supposed to be nurturing and comforting and all that kind of stuff, but then at the same time that can go too far.
Yep.
To where the men or the sons are not being encouraged to just strengthen themselves, whether it's their inner being or literally their physical bodies, and the husbands are supposed to come in and protect. Like, no, he needs to man up through this. And you are really good at not doing that, though, which I'm thankful for, because when Eddie can be whiny or whatever, no, you tell him, just like we've been saying, broaden your shoulders. You got this. You're strong. You can get through it.
Tough it up.
Tough it up. And so that's really good. But there is a myriad of ways that men are failing to be fruitful and multiply, failing to work and to want
subdue
the earth and take dominion, and they're failing to protect. And we see it because women have the roles that men should have. That's everywhere.
So, question time.
Okay.
We can kind of start from the top and work our way down. In the church, obviously, we believe that all of the elders, all of the leadership in the church ought to be masculine.
Right. If
the leadership in the home is to be masculine, then the leadership in the church ought to be masculine as well.
Yep.
Which could be another podcast for another time.
Yep.
But the qualifications that are outlined for an elder and a deacon ought to be the
barometer.
Yeah, I guess like the litmus test for what a godly man looks like.
Yeah.
So as society is changing, would you encourage men to be able to meet that criteria for elder and deacon, like especially right now as church and church culture and like what is even allowed by governments right now is getting kind of dicey. Like, I'll give you an example. Okay. Yesterday, Sandra and I were talking about like what's going to happen if like legitimately all the churches are shut down. You cannot meet in a building. There will be guards there. Electricity is turned off. Whatever. Like, let's just say that. Right. It's not that far-fetched. That literally was happening in New York for months, right?
I know. Yeah. Sadly, it is not that far-fetched.
Let's just say that men are going to have to be qualified to open up their homes and lead churches in their homes. Are there enough men that actually would be qualified to even do that right now?
So that dude, ask yourself that question. Like, if I had to just do church for my family, could you? So one of the qualifications for elders is you're able to teach, right? That means it's clear, right? Are you able to do that? So that way your family would continue to be fed the word of God. And if right now you're thinking, well, shoot, I could never go up and give a sermon or even teach like a Sunday school class, then you're wrong.
Then put the car magazine down, stop watching funny YouTube videos, and pick up a book about how to
stop watching
study
all
scripture.
I know men get caught up in news stuff too, right? And they're watching hours and hours of politics and stuff, which is not unimportant.
No, certainly not.
But it should definitely not take precedence over knowing the Word of God in a way that you would be able to teach your family the Word of God. And so I get it. Not everybody is going to have like a real good gifting at teaching, I guess.
Right.
But as the head of your family, you are supposed to be able to teach your wife and your kids.
Okay. So then, okay, that's that. You kind of trickle that into the husband.
Mm-hmm.
Our sons, the boys that are growing up in our home, little covenant saplings.
Yeah.
What would your encouragement be to fathers who know that the world that our sons are going to grow up into is likely going to be a world that's hostile towards their faith? That's my phone. What encouragement would you give to those dudes in raising up godly, strong oaks?
You need to be able to be an example that they should follow, and then you bring them along and say, follow me. And that's how, and this takes many conversations, and not to say I do this perfectly, but I talk with Eddie a lot about this kind of stuff and just tell him, why I did a certain thing, or what was my thinking when I acted a certain way, in public or at church or with you or with the girls or whatever it is. But Eddie needs to be taught all that as we go, right? The Great Commission is go therefore, and the going is like a present tense, always happening.
It's progressive,
as you go, it's always happening. And so as we disciple our kids as part of the Great Commission, it's a constant thing. And so you need to be able to not go to your son and accommodate or adjust yourself to him. You need to always be looking to raise him up.
Right.
Right. And I see the error a lot of times where it's like condescension to the point where there's no
You're talking
growth.
baby talk to him all the time.
Right. Or you're accommodating the whininess or the frailty rather than, nope, we don't do that. Godly men are way stronger than that. And then just having a firm but reasonable, I don't even want to say gentle, like a firm hand.
No, boys
but
don't
you're
need
not,
gentle.
Yeah. But you're not a jerk, but you're still firm in that you're not going to budge on the standard. Right. We know what a godly man looks like. We know what God expects from a godly man. And so of your sons, expect the same thing.
Right.
I think it was Doug Wilson that said, fathers should be pleased but never satisfied.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, that's the way God is with us, right? We are righteous in Christ right now. We are new creations, totally forgiven, declared righteous, but he's not satisfied, right? There's still sin in our lives that we have to die to, and there's still maturity in Christ that we need to grow into. And so as fathers, we should be pleased, right? When they do something, when they take the trash out, you give them a good big thanks, and you always praise the manly things that he does do, big time, always praise. And if you find yourself correcting way more than you're praising, then look for ways to be able to praise more than correct too.
Well, you probably need to repent because there's something you're not doing, more than likely, right?
Right.
And I think this is all about practice too. This is practicing for the husband. It's practicing for the son. It's like everyone just needs to practice obedience and practice godly behavior.
And with joy.
And with joy.
Right. So another thing that Doug Wilson said that was really helpful about masculinity is the glad assumption of sacrificial responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
And so show your son how you can take responsibility for something gladly.
Right.
And it might be sacrificial too. It might be something where you have to give up time in the garage,
whatever.
Y'all know I hate video games. So whatever, like those personal things, you may have to sacrifice those to take responsibility for your family or take responsibility for something. But when you do it, if you do it begrudgingly, you are giving a terrible message to your son that this is how I am a godly man, is by begrudgingly take responsibility for the things God has given me.
If you have to like bark at your wife the whole time you're doing family worship or whatever it is, like fine, I'll do it. Like, what? That's not a good example.
Yeah. Don't be petty. It's ugly.
Yeah. Be the leader.
Yeah. And so, just happily, gladly walking in what God has created you for, is a great example for your sons to be able to, hey, boy, can you take out the trash? Yep. Yes, sir. Like, just that happy, glad obedience needs to be modeled and needs to be expected.
Well, and do it young. Like, I feel like so many Christian families put far too little weight on their sons' shoulders. Their daughters too, but far too little on their sons especially. They'll wait until their kids are 10 years old before they start giving them chores, or they'll wait until, you know, the kid finally says, hey, Dad, can I take the trash out, before they act. Like, little on. I remember even if Eddie couldn't carry a trash bag out at 4, he would be holding the milk jug, taking it out to the recycling with you, or what. Like, but get them involved and get them to see as early on that, you know, you're part of this. This is something that you need to grow into. And this is what the challenge you're going to have to face someday. And so let's get you prepared for that. Yep.
And then, of course, you want him, if he has sons, to be able to do the same thing.
Right.
And keep it going. So that's the other thing to think about. Now, to encourage.
Speaking of sons, I see ours in the background.
Oh yeah, I see creeping around back there. If you're listening to this audio, go over to YouTube and watch. So, but so this is like my final encouragement. Then, like, I know that men fall short in this many ways. I know our culture wants men to fall short in these ways.
That's why they're calling it toxic masculinity, because they just hate masculinity.
But if you are to follow God faithfully, men, there is no excuse for, well, I don't exercise, I don't do that, or I'm not smart in that way, or I don't do that. Stop justifying your laziness, or stop justifying and making excuses for your inabilities. Go and better yourself. And I believe God's called men to do that. If you don't know how to work something, go learn how to work that. If you're not strong and you can't do, work around the house because you're out of shape, then get in better shape.
Stop eating.
Stop altogether. Just not gonna. Just kidding. But like, get better in whatever area that is. If you're not smart theologically, then buy systematic theology like John Frame or Calvin's Institutes. Don't buy something that's garbage, and just read it, and you will learn. If you don't know how to...
And then start discussing it with your wife. Like,
well, that's true too.
You have this gift of a helpmate, utilize it. If you're not good at something, say, babe, I really wish I could figure out how to, have a theological discussion with our kids. Let's go through this together. Like, none of this is necessarily like you being shoved off in the corner to fend for yourself. No. You have the Holy Spirit who is working in you and through you, and you have a helpmate that God has given to you, hopefully.
Pastor.
You have godly men, hopefully, a pastor, elders, other older men in the church who can disciple you.
Yeah. But there just should never be I just don't, or I'm just not good at, or those kinds of excuses need to never come out of your mouth. And just, you need to have like this holy desire to just be better at everything. That's just part of
conquer it.
Working and keeping the garden. That's just part of it, is that, conquer it. Take dominion of that. Whatever it is.
It's going to be a little bit of work for sure.
Yeah.
But that's your job.
Take joy in that. Take joy in that growth and that strengthening of whatever it is.
And if you have the ability, if you are an older man who is theologically sound and you have a heart to see other younger men invest in their families more, find a young man, a newly married couple or something, and just, I don't know, take him into your home and teach him how to, change the oil filter in the car. Teach him how to lead family worship. Teach him how to do those things. Invite him in and show him how you do it.
Yeah. Get in there and start poking at his life and see how he's doing.
And we've done that a couple times, and every time we have, it's always been received great. There were bumps in the roads sometime.
Yeah.
But by and large, that's just how people learn, right? So invite people into your home. That's the whole stupid COVID thing, is that people are too afraid to go into someone else's home, and hospitality and discipleship is waning.
Yeah. Yeah. So, hope that was helpful. And if there's questions, comment them wherever, YouTube, Facebook, or whatever, or send me a message.
Yawning.
And then we'll answer it, and we'll get your question answered. And we'd love to hear from you.
Yep.
But we hope that was helpful. I hope you learned something new, right?
Or we're just encouraged.
Yeah, true too. So, in all of that, especially men on this episode, be steadfast, immovable, always abounding in the work of the Lord, knowing that your labor is not in vain. Until next time, get woke.